All right, I have descended into a realm of complete absurdity being a technology enthusiast. And basically, over the past 2 to 2.5 years, I have owned 6 different computer monitors in various price ranges, and all have been fundamentally disappointing. And I've got through returning the last of them, and I just had to come on here and share some thoughts with you guys. I do discuss this in detail on my podcast, but since fewer people listen to my podcast than watch reruns of Queer Eye for the Straight Guy in Saudi Arabia, I felt like I'll come on YouTube and maybe put something out there that can help prospective buyers who are looking to do a monitor upgrade, specifically an upgrade to NVIDIA G-Sync monitors. Now, I realize if you follow the channel, I came on and I did a sort of a parody of the quirky hardware reviewer, which, as I've researched monitors, I've had to watch tons and tons and tons of these people, you know who they are, who intersperse their wonderful personalities with information. So the perspective that I'm coming from, for those of you who are out there looking for a higher-end monitor, is that of a enthusiast consumer. Okay, I'm not a professional gamer. I'm not someone who has to have the latest and greatest. I'm not someone who does professional video or photo work. So take it from the perspective of someone who is not a casual gamer. I enjoy computer games, and I want to get the most out of them with a good monitor upgrade. So I'm going to take you through this journey briefly that I've been on and give you some thoughts at the end of what you can really do if you want a reasonable monitor upgrade. So before the advent of DisplayPort, before the advent of Quad HD and UHD and all of that, I was using Hewlett-Packard monitors with kind of the glossy finish. They were all 1080p, fine. But when DisplayPort came out and the higher resolutions came out, I picked up on a Black Friday, I want to say in 2014 maybe, late 2014, a monoprice glass panel Pro, and you'll see the part numbers here on screen. And this was an exciting monitor. It was 2560 by 1440, so a good 1440p monitor. It was really incredibly bright. It had very intense colors, which, again, I'll just say here at the outset, I am someone who likes color intensity and saturation, so I don't calibrate these to be lifelike, because let's face it, life is depressing. Life is boring. I don't need the grays and blacks and browns of life. When I look at a computer screen when I'm playing a game, I want vivid, saturated color. So this was a really good monitor for me, and the upgrade going from 1080p to 1440p was great. The problem with this monitor was that it came with, it was a glossy screen, but on top of the gloss there was some sort of anti-glare coating, and the people who packed it, wherever they were, had sort of touched that coating, and their fingerprints were all over it, and this stuff was impossible to get off. And as I was using it, I loved everything about the monitor. It was almost like having a tablet in front of you. It was that solid an image. Very hard to see the pixels, at least for the time. And so I try to use it. I try to work with it. And I couldn't. I called Monoprice. I said, look, can you send me a replacement? This stuff on the screen will not come off. And they told me, well, we don't really have a replacement. These are hard to manufacture. We're not manufacturing them anymore. But since you're still under warranty, we're going to send you our current top-of-the-line monitor, which was the Crystal Pro 4K monitor. Now, whereas the Monoprice monitor that I have, this 1440p monitor, was an IPS panel, and a pretty good one at that, this was 4K, but this was, sadly, a TN monitor, so twist pneumatic monitor, and the colors obviously were not as intense, not as vivid, but it had this sheet of glass over it, so it looked reasonably good. Now, of course, it is hard to game in 4K, especially now we're talking March of 2015 maybe. So hard to game in 4K, and if you've ever used a 4K panel, at least if your eyes aren't that great, the icons are very small, so to make the interface usable, you have to scale it in Windows, and as we know, that Windows scaling is not great. So I've got this monitor, and it's working out. I'm not thrilled, but it's got a lot of different adjustments, and I can watch whatever 4K content is out there, i.e. the YouTube videos of frogs. At that point, that was all there was. Maybe a demo close-up of like an orange and a strawberry. So that was fucking thrilling. And as time went on, the already bad colors of this panel started to degrade. The screen got dimmer and dimmer. But I already fulfilled my warranty, so there was nothing I can do. I had this kind of mediocre monitor becoming a poor monitor sitting in front of me. So I wanted to upgrade from that. And the ultrawides were starting to come out. So now I said, okay, let me get an ultrawide panel. And I wound up with an LG 34-inch ultrawide. And now I was going from 4K down, in this case, to 2560 by 1080. So essentially a 1080p monitor. And it was you can argue whether it was an upgrade. It was different. The immersion of the games was better. This is an IPS panel, so the colors were better, but the text and the sharpness, this is a very pixely display. Although it did really well in gaming, and if you click on, I think it was the first episode of the podcast, I actually gave a fairly in-depth review of this, so I'm not going to go into it here, but it was sufficient, and it was fairly impressive in its color saturation and its gaming. It just looked significantly better in gaming than it did just working on a spreadsheet or working on Windows. All right, so fast forward to about a month ago, I pick up the GTX 1080, and I know that the GTX 1080 paired with this LG ultrawide monitor, which is essentially a 1080p monitor, is overkill. I've got the most powerful card available. I want to drive a powerful monitor, and this is where G-Sync starts coming in. Okay, I can go with 4K or I can go with G-Sync, and initially I said, you know what, I'm going to put G-Sync off. I'm going to go 4K. And I was reading some reviews about good 4K televisions for computer monitors, and I picked up a Samsung KU6300. Now, if you go on to websites like RTings, that's right, RTINGS, very good site for television reviews, this television was rated absolutely abysmally for its properties as a television, but they said as a gaming display and a computer monitor was actually very good. So again, I kind of go into, on the latest episode of my podcast where I talk about this issue in a little bit more in depth, I talk about its different properties, but long story short, this is an amazing television. It is great for gaming. It's a VA panel, 4K resolution, does 4K 60 hertz on the PC, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's stunning to have, in this case, the 40-inch model on my desk, gaming in 4K, or sometimes in the really intense games, dropping it down to 1440p. I'm having a blast. This is the solution. I found it right here. Problem is, I'm getting a little bit older, and for whatever reason, I was getting insane eye fatigue. Even though I was in 4K, I had, again, scale windows, because if it was in true 4K, I couldn't see anything. So the icons were so small. So I'm gaming on this, and it's great, but after my gaming sessions, I have insane eye fatigue. Again, this could just be me, but I'm going to say I was stunned by how great this was. Still, I use the computer a lot. I can't have this eye fatigue. So the television goes. Now I'm in G-Sync territory. So I've already gone through all these monitors, and you see I'm slowly creeping up the price scale here. So where do I land? Okay, Asus, see if I get this right. This is the Asus PG278Q. This is their TN 1440p IPS panel. Came out in 2014, so it's a little bit older now, and I got it on a kind of a discount for what it is. But still, the most expensive monitor I've purchased to this date. Well, keep in mind, coming from an IPS ultrawide and a 4K VA panel with vibrant color, deep blacks, this is a TN panel, and boy, it shows. And as much as I was impressed by G-Sync, and I'm going to talk a little bit about G-Sync at the end, but let me go over these panels here. As much as I was impressed by the motion of G-Sync and how it is a buttery smooth experience, everything that you've heard about it being great is true. It's a TN panel, and I just could not go back to a TN panel. I use my computer for a lot of different things. I consume content. I, in some cases, create content, watch videos, and I game. And so, as fabulous as this was, as this monitor is for gaming, it was actually pretty poor for everything else. So, all right, this gets returned. Now I said, okay, I'm gonna shoot for the top. I'm gonna get the Acer Predator. This is brand new 2016 model, Acer Predator. Man, I'm blanking on it, but it's the IPS. And again, you'll see the part number on the screen. It's the IPS 1440p, 165 hertz monitor. All right, and everyone says if you get a good sample of this, you're golden. Well, I got a pretty bad sample. First of all, it did have some light bleed and IPS glow. And I'm a realist when it comes to these things. I don't mind IPS glow. It's a property of the panel. And as long as you can't see it when you're using the computer and gaming, if you're on a black screen, whatever. But in normal use, if you can't see the glow, I don't care how much there is. I'm fine with it. IPS bleed, on the other hand, can also be manageable. But again, same litmus test. If I can see it in normal computing, if I can see it when consuming normal content, playing normal games, it's a problem. Well, in this case, IPS light bleed, dead center, a little cone right at the bottom of the screen, which distorted color on darker content. So that's a problem. Bigger problem, and you'll see this, I still have this video up on the channel, it started to flicker. It would just start flickering as I was scrolling around the internet, and in some games as well. Now, bear in mind, none of the other monitors did this. So this is top of the line. This is an $800 monitor, MSRP. I paid about $100 less for it, but still, again, now the most expensive monitor. And as an IPS monitor, it actually wasn't as good as the very first IPS monitor that I started out with, the Monoprice. So this is where I come to the point, is G-Sync worth it right now? And the analogy I'm going to make is G-Sync is a wonderful technology, but right now it suits a very specific purpose. If you are a competitive gamer, if you play in tournaments, if you play competitively online, particularly shooters, it is a feature that you cannot live without. And I can say that because I suck at first-person shooters. Okay. But playing with the playing with G-Sync, I was more competitive than normal. And to give you an example, as playing Star Wars Battlefront, usually I'm lucky if I can get more kills than times that I've been killed. And if my kill count goes over, 5, if assuming I don't have the hero characters or some of the vehicles. I was consistently able to kill more than I was killed, and I was consistently able to get kill counts from 10 to 20, which I know you're going to say, oh, you suck. Well, yeah, I do suck. But for me, I noticed that my accuracy greatly increased. So if it's doing that for someone who sucks, if you're a competitive gamer, it is a must-have. It looks wonderful. It does make games better in all instances. But you've got to ask yourself, as great as it is, do you want to make all of the other compromises you're going to have to make? I believe, if you read all the reviews online, these are substandard panels, at least from Asus and Acer. Whether you go TN or IPS, these are substandard variants of this panel technology. And the only saving grace is the fact that it is G-Sync. So if it didn't have G-Sync, I suspect these would be like $200 monitors. The other thing that is worth pointing out is that when I went from G-Sync on the TN to G-Sync on the IPS, I noticed the lag, and I was surprised because you're going from 1 millisecond gray-to-gray refresh to about 4 milliseconds, and again, maybe the Acer, Acer Predator, maybe there was, it was obviously defective, maybe there was something wrong with the chip, but I really noticed the lag such that I felt like if I had to go G-Sync, this was my only concern, I'd get the TN, a G-Sync TN panel. But again, since I do all sorts of things on my computer, and I like to be impressed when I turn on that monitor with the color accuracy, with the saturation, and the gaming ability, and the ability to consume content on it, I can't just have G-Sync. I need the full package. None of these monitors, in my opinion, offer that package. And again, go on to Newegg, go on to Amazon or any other website and read the reviews. You're going to see a lot of people giving it 5 out of 5s, and you're going to see a lot of people trashing it because there are so many bad samples floating around out there. And the absurd position you're put in is to either accept it, hey, pay $800, accept it, and just get what you can out of it, or engage in the so-called panel lottery where you RMA 6 of them and you hope the 7th is good. To me, it's not worth my time anymore. Now, again, I went through the carousel, so I returned the Acer, and I've come to the realization that this is a strategy, right? They're appealing, at least the ultrawide and the G-Sync panels that I'm talking about here, they're appealing to a niche market, and they think that the niche market will either just deal with the problems and upgrade next year, or they'll be crazy enough to constantly RMA and find a good one because they're so sold on the technology. G-Sync, if you want an analogy, at this point, it's kind of like, let's say a Ferrari engine was put in to a Hyundai coupe. Okay, you've got this wonderful powerhouse driving the product, but everything else about it is substandard. It's not bad. It's not like the worst monitor, but when you're paying $700, $800, or if you're stepping up to the ultra-wide IPS G-Sync panels that both these manufacturers are putting out, you're paying $1,200, $1,300. You should not have to deal with insane light bleed, insane levels of IPS glow. You obviously shouldn't have to deal with a faulty product, and you should be blown away every time you turn the monitor on. It's not happening. So I think G-Sync, again, unless you really need it, I got to say I personally can live without it for now. That's not to say if all things being equal, I would prefer it. Certainly it is a game changer, but I mean that in the literal sense of the word. It changes how you play games, but when it's stuck in a substandard panel, your overall computing experience is going to be diminished. I'm sorry, I can't in 2016 game on a TN panel and feel like I'm staring at a cash register screen or a monitor in a doctor's office. I want something better at home. So I think the smart money right now, and the smart bet right now, is to just wait for the prices to drop. I mean, if the Acer was $350, $400, I might have kept it, but at $700 or $800, it's unacceptable. If the Asus TN was 300, $400, I might have said, well, I'll deal with it for now. But at the premium prices this technology is commanding, and the kind of essentially monopoly that, it's not really NVIDIA with the monopoly, but it's a very niche product, and it seems like only Acer and Asus are putting out these models. And Dell has gotten in there with a panel, which is supposedly awful. I think ViewSonic is coming out with one, but you're trapped with these vendors, and they know that, and they know people are going to pay the insane prices, so what do they care if quality assurance is bad? And everyone mentions that in these reviews. Well, newsflash, quality assurance is terrible. There's no quality control. Of course there's no quality control. They have a monopoly. Both of these companies have a monopoly on the technology, and obviously people are still buying these things. So they have no incentive to actually test the panel for, does it really have the response time? How is the backlight bleed? And so forth. They're coming out with them, and they're leaving it on us to either deal with it, accept it, or return it. They don't care. So out of all these panels that I've owned, I would say if basically right now the ultrawide and the Samsung television are about $500. Both of them, I think, are the way to go, particularly if you can stand the Samsung panel. Tremendous. And if you go on to ratings, Rtings, I actually wrote to the editors and I said, there's something about this panel, because it's not HDR, officially HDR, but there's something amazing about its color reproduction and contrast. And they've said, for whatever reason, it is one of the best models they've ever tested for color and contrast. And it has reasonable input lag, so I think that might be the way to go. I personally, strangely at this point, I think it's come full circle. The old mono-price 1440p monitors have been slashed in price down to like $200. I may just get one of those and deal with the fingerprints or the coating and wait for a serious product to come out that doesn't cost $1,000. Give us a good IPS panel with G-Sync at between $400 and $600, and I'll consider it again. Until that point, I have to suffer without G-Sync and just accept the fact that the situation in buying monitors has reached this point of absurdity, this really low bar in quality, and it's just not worth top dollar anymore.